Hello everybody and welcome back to A Few Minutes of History. Today's episode is a real cracker and continues on my theme of medal winners. Operation Market Garden was, as many of you know, supposed to end the war by Christmas 1944. The ambitious plan created by Field Marshal Montgomery involved dropping 3 airborne divisions into occupied Holland. These divisions would capture and hold a series of bridges so that 30 Corps could push up the road and open up a new front straight into the heart of Germany. But in today's episode, I shall not be talking about Operation Market Garden as an operation. I shall be talking about one man and his heroics that saw him awarded Britain's highest award, the Victoria Cross. Robert Henry Cain was born January 1909 in Shanghai, China. His parents were originally from the Isle of Man and soon returned home, and Cain grew up on the island and was educated at King William's College. After finishing school and college, he began working for Shell. He worked in Thailand and Malaya during his career. In between this, he joined the Honourable Artillery Company in the Territorial Army, which in modern times is the Army Reserve. When the Second World War began, Cain initially wasn't called up, but in 1940 he was given an emergency commission as a second lieutenant and joined the Royal Northumberland Fusiliers. In 1942 he was seconded to the 2nd Battalion, the South Staffordshire Regiment, and was promoted temporarily to the rank of Major. On the 17th of September 1944, Cain and B Company of the 2nd South Staffs assembled in their gliders, prepared to embark onto the assault into occupied Holland. 5 minutes into the flight, however, the tow rope connecting the towing plane to the Horsa glider snapped, and the glider landed safely on the ground. Back in England, the men made their way back to the airfield and flew out to Arnhem on the second day of the operation. Upon landing, he took his men and set off to find the rest of B Company, who, at the time, were moving forward to assist the 1st Parachute Brigade. The men were involved in bloody fighting around the St. Elizabeth Hospital. The men encountered heavy German resistance and made it to a dell near the Arnhem City Museum. It was in this area that the men of B Company first encountered enemy armour. Armed with only piets, grenades and mortars, the men barely put a dent in the German tanks and eventually were forced back. But not before the tanks unleashed hell upon the lightly armed infantry. The brutal fighting had left the South Staffordshires decimated, with only around 100 men left able to fight, and with Major Robert Cain as its only senior officer. The men retreated back to Oosterbeek and dug in along the line. They joined Major Lonsdale's force along the southern part of the eastern perimeter. It was here that Cain would show incredible bravery and courage that would see him awarded the Victoria Cross. The bitter fighting that had decimated the South Staffs had a profound effect on Major Cain. He gained a distaste for enemy armour and sought to destroy as much of it as possible. If enemy tanks were reported to be nearby, he would grab the nearest piet and do his best to take it on himself. On one occasion, 2 German armoured vehicles approached Cain's position. These were believed to be a Tiger and a Stug 3. Cain waited in a trench until the Stug was close enough to engage. He fired a round at the vehicle, but failed to destroy it. The vehicle then turned its attention to Cain and fired a round into the building behind him, showering him with falling bricks and mortar. Cain, unfazed by this, continued firing at the vehicle until it was disabled. Its crew bailed out, but these were quickly gunned down by other men. Cain quickly turned and engaged the second tank. When he loaded and tried to fire his piet, however, the round exploded and the weapon blew up in his face, wounding him. Cain was dragged away, and a British 75mm gun destroyed the tank. Cain was then dragged back to the British aid station, but he refused morphine for his wounds and decided that he wasn't wounded enough to remain where he was, and quickly headed back to the front line, against the objections of the doctors. The following day, his eardrums burst from the constant firing. Cain once again brushed this off and continued to fight. On the 24th of September, a short truce was organised to allow both sides to evacuate their wounded and dead. On completion of this, Cain was alerted to the approach of another German tank. Cain, along with the Royal Artillery gunner, raced towards a 6-pounder anti-tank gun. The men moving it into position, fired and destroyed the German tank. The gun was shortly rendered out of action as the recoil mechanism broke. The following day, the Germans launched a huge attack on the British positions. Infantry, tanks and flamethrowers all smashed into the battered British men, who by this point had used up most of their ammunition. Undeterred by this, Major Cain armed himself with a 2-inch mortar. He fired the mortar almost horizontally due to the close proximity of the enemy to their positions. Eventually, the German attack was driven off by the battered and exhausted airborne men. By the end of that night, Major Cain had reportedly destroyed 6 German tanks, as well as a number of other vehicles and scores of infantry. Robert Cain and what remained of his men withdrew from Oosterbeek that night. Cain shaved the beard from his face before departure and ensured every man under his command who was able to cross the river before he himself departed. When Cain arrived at British headquarters, he was greeted by Brigadier Hicks, who said, There's one officer at least who shaved. Cain replied in classic officer fashion, "I was well brought up, sir." 5 Victoria Crosses were awarded during Operation Market Garden. Major Robert Cain was the only one to survive the battle. He also holds the distinction of being the only soldier from the Isle of Man to be awarded the Victoria Cross. Cain was awarded the honorary rank of Major after the war and was demobilised in December 1945. After the war, he returned to work with Shell. Cain had 4 children. His daughter Frances married former Top Gear presenter Jeremy Clarkson. His family were unaware that their father had been awarded the Victoria Cross, as, according to Clarkson, he forgot to mention it to them. Robert Cain died in 1974. But that concludes today's episode. Hope you all enjoyed it. Don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and drop me a comment as well. Thank you all. We'll see you on the next one. Cheery bye.